Welcome back to the Midlife by Design podcast. I'm your host, Lori Lisai, and I'm a human design teacher, mentor, and alignment coach, here to help you use human design to shed others' expectations and be who you came here to be in this midlife phase of your journey. In today's episode, I speak with Melissa Fenner, a 6'3" sacral manifesting generator who knows a bit about the MG pivot. We talked about teaching during COVID, career pivots, health, parenting and sending your child off to school, navigating married relationships as an empty nester, and more. A true manifesting generator episode. Melissa is a beautiful human, and I know you're going to love this. Welcome back to Midlife by Design. Today, I am so excited to have Melissa Fenner with me. Melissa and I met actually through human design, and she had a curiosity about it and found me, and we did some readings and some work together and have just gotten to know each other over the last couple of years, and she's such a beautiful human. So I am so excited to have her here today to talk with us. So welcome, Melissa. And
thank you, Lori. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay,
I'm
me
so
too.
excited to be. I've been enjoying listening to your podcast and learning so much more, because there's just so much to learn with human design, and you were my gateway in. And yeah, it's been a great resource for sure during the past couple of years for me.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that. Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
I am 55 years old. I describe myself as a recovering perfectionist, and I came into teaching. Was not my first venture until I realized, basically the story is my mother was a teacher, and I was like, oh, never doing that. And then, the calling was always there. It was always there. And went back and became a teacher after having graduated with a theater degree and a communications degree, and just felt the call and became a middle school math teacher. I enjoy that age very much because they're constantly different, which kind of plays into my human design a little bit. And then, had some struggles with COVID and whatnot, and kind of took a hiatus a little bit to strengthen my container. And now I'm headed back. But human design has been helpful. You were super helpful at a very low time, and discovering human design has been most helpful.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. And you mentioned the recovering perfectionist, and the 6 line especially can really get mired in that. And sometimes some stuckness can happen because the 6 line is the very last line of all the profiles. And it's like looking beyond into almost like into the next realm, and just tends to think very holistically and sees how things can and should be perfect. And so can be really challenged there. So no surprise. I don't know if I had this question for you originally, but I'm curious, how do you work with that? How have you learned to work with that?
It's definitely a struggle, because my emotional side just, I don't always understand, politics, not to go into politics, but I don't understand why sometimes people behave and treat each other the way that they do. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I have to turn off the news. I stopped going on Facebook during some of the elections, because it was either I quit my job and I go make sure the person I want gets elected, or I have to get off Facebook and social media and be a teacher and a mother and a wife. So that's definitely sometimes a challenge for sure.
Yeah. Boundaries, it sounds like, right?
Yep. Boundaries are, Yep. That's new for me, and it's coming in hot right now.
Yeah.
As I head back to the classroom. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right. Going back to the classroom. Okay, I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to come back to this journey that you have had with your career and some twists and turns, especially more recently. So I'm curious how you gained the clarity in your decision making in terms of coming back, actually deciding to return to the classroom this fall. And you, for listeners, you are a sacral authority. So sacral authorities are meant to make decisions in the moment, really follow that gut feeling. So I'm just curious for you how you came to the decision.
So just kind of like the backstory of it is that I really love teaching. As I mentioned in the beginning, I felt the call, and I get what lights me up is really helping people, empowering them to thrive, to discover their gifts, and that's my jam. And I have to say, COVID, for everyone in every profession and every facet of life was a huge wrench. And the first year of COVID was a struggle. But the 2 years following, I found, and most colleagues, I think, would agree that that was the harder part, because students forgot how to student and parents forgot how to parent, and admin didn't know how to support because it was all new. We were reinventing everything like in an instant. So for my human design, that pivot is good. But when no one around you can do it with you, it's a super struggle. So it really left, teachers often juggle lots of balls in the air, but after that, it just seemed like they were heavier and larger and more of them. And then what had happened for me was the January before I decided to resign, I had COVID. And it took me like 6 weeks to even kind of feel better. And I just never really got over it. Felt like I had long COVID. Was it menopause? The energy from supporting my colleagues was just pulling me down, because everyone really felt like an island. There was no one to lift us up. Mm-hmm. And then in that spring, my youngest son moved out, graduated college and moved out and on his own. So now I'm an empty nester and I'm feeling miserable. And I said, I just can't do this anymore. I need a break. So I resigned, and then I exhaled and then kind of slept for a week. And then I kind of started the search of, who am I now? Like, what lights me up now that in my mind, I'm no longer a mom, I'm no longer a teacher. The things that brought me joy 25 years ago shouldn't bring me joy now. So what does? And it was really kind of a free fall. It did not feel very good. And in that process is when you and I crossed paths. And it certainly helped me to say, oh, some of the things that I'm feeling, some of the desires of what I still feel called to do makes sense with my human design. And I was still feeling really exhausted that summer. Ended up going to the doctor and found out, I thought it was menopause. I really did. And I was like, this is horrible. Women should be talking about this more. What is going on? And I ended up being diagnosed with Lyme, which was an old Lyme, didn't know, but apparently they're finding more and more that COVID can reactivate Lyme, and it reactivated the Lyme and Epstein-Barr. My hormone levels were like in the toilet. So it was like, hold on, I got to work on my health. It helped me to feel better about taking a step back from education, that I needed to do that, because I don't think I would have that fall been able to really function. And so I started to embrace my health. And then I started doing all the searching on LinkedIn and all of that, 53 years old, was like, I don't know what any of this means. And the corporate world operates in a totally different way than education. Like, things take forever in the corporate world. And that just blew my mind. I'm like, as a teacher, we have to make a decision in the moment or by the end of the day. And pivoting is so quick, and the rest of the world doesn't operate like that at all. So I struggled with that. But I think recognizing that some of those traits in that human design piece helped me to find the confidence to kind of search in the path and the direction of what lit me up, right? Those words that you use to help me to understand and to listen to my sacral. I definitely knew when something was right and when something wasn't. And because I had the space of not working, I know that I was very blessed to have this space to heal and to find what was next for me in my journey. I was able to look at things differently and see how I responded to things differently in the past when I was younger and I didn't trust that, how I would just load everything on. Somebody wanted me to be involved in something and I would just do it, right? And I didn't know how to manage all the balls in the air. So it was a tough thing, and I struggled a lot with it all. And then I ended up doing this teacher career course I had found online, and it was kind of for teachers who were saying, I don't know if I need to continue on this path or if I need to find something different. And the woman who designed it, Daphne, was brilliant in being able to say things are kind of in three different buckets. Like, you want to stay in education, but maybe you need a change. Maybe you need a different grade level, a different building, district, whatever. Or maybe you want to do something that is teacher adjacent or education adjacent, meaning you're helping curriculum, you're working with textbook companies or curriculum writers or online work, or working in colleges, helping teachers become great teachers. Or maybe you need something completely different. And I really liked that ability to discern that I'm not just abandoning education. Like, what do I still need? And I kind of went down the path of the ed adjacent. And I got a role working for a company that was training teachers to use their online program. And that certainly filled me up a little bit. I loved being able to help teachers use this product well. And as an educator, you don't want PD that wastes your time. So I was very much aware of that and really wanting to utilize that. So that filled me up. Unfortunately, it wasn't regular enough as an income or to keep me busy the way I like to be busy. So to answer your question, I think was, why did I decide to return? And it's actually kind of a funny story. Well, it's not really funny, but it's the universe and it's brilliant. So in January this past year, I did a manifesting challenge. Gabby Bernstein offers it every year, kind of thing. So I did the manifesting challenge, and it was kind of like, we're on the day of write down exactly what you want. What is it that you want? Write down the money you want, the role you want. And I wasn't thinking teacher, but thinking the money. And I was thinking about the things that make me feel good about doing my craft in the world. And the very next day, I got a text from a former colleague who shared with me that her cohort person, the role that I had in that building before I left and went to another district, was retiring. And she's like, and I think you should come back. And I was like, universe, this is not funny. This is not funny. I was already out of education, not funny. So then I sat with it a little bit and I shared it with my husband, and he was like, maybe you reach out to the principal. So I reached out to the principal and said, little bird told me that this person's retiring. Should we have coffee? And I got a large yes with exclamation points. And I was like, And the whole process unfolded super easy, way too easy. And I was like, I have to trust. I have to have faith. The universe is telling me that this is what's meant to be. And I kind of came around to, I think if I go back, because I still have more to give, and I know that. And then this time around, I get to leave when I'm ready to retire for good on my own terms, that I'm healthy and it's just time instead of the way things happened before. So that was a very roundabout way to answer your question. But
oh my gosh,
kind of how everything unfolded for me. It was not an easy decision, and it's still a little, I armored up before I left. And it was really hard for me to see that side of me that I couldn't peel back those layers. It took a lot. It took a lot for me to make the decision. And I'm still, I'm going back next week, and there's still that little hesitation in me that's worried about how it's going to unfold. And knowing that I'm not the same person when I worked at that district, I'm not the same person that left the other district. I've built a brand new container. I'm learning to set boundaries, and I have my yoga practice and my meditation practice, which beautifully occurred during these 2 years. Yeah. So that's kind of that's my resting point of hoping to be able to strengthen that container, build those good, healthy boundaries, and come home every day not feeling completely depleted.
Oh my gosh, you said so many amazing things. Thank you so much for sharing the story of how this all unfolded for you. I was having goosebumps and just getting all emotional. It's just such a beautiful story. And I think one of the things that you mentioned that I want to circle back to is the balls that manifesting generators have in the air, right? Many times manifesting generators are super busy. there's an intensity, you've got so much going on, and that's probably where you're most comfortable with lots of things going on.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the job that you got supporting teachers wasn't maybe busy enough for you, right? You also said that after COVID, that those balls became heavier and and more of them. And I just want to kind of highlight that point that you made, because I'm sure that if teachers are listening to this, and really anybody coming through the pandemic, but especially teachers, I think took the brunt of a lot of what was going on in our society, right? Suddenly, so much more was being put on teachers in terms of extra parenting duties. And suddenly you had to become a school nurse, as part of the work, and just all of these added responsibilities on top of everything else that we already had to do as teachers, right? So the idea that you mentioned about heaviness is so true. And thank you for, bringing that into the story. And I also want to commend you for listening to your body, because, it sounds like this journey with Lyme, that is no joke. I know people who have had the same thing happen to them in the last few years where it comes back up. And interesting that you said you thought it was menopause, because that was the same situation with some of the women I know. They would go to the doctor and the doctor said, well, this is just what menopause is. But they knew actually that there must be something else. It can't be this bad. And so that is an incredible journey in and of itself. And just so fascinating to see how this has come full circle for you, and your ability over the last few years, as difficult as they have been and as much as they have challenged you, what you seem to learn coming through this, and your ability to truly listen to yourself is, again, commendable and amazing, and what we would hope for when we think about our soul's work. So you mentioned boundaries, and I just wanted to mention, so for Melissa, she has 4 of her centers defined: her throat, her ego, which makes her a manifesting generator with that motor to the throat, and then her root and her sacral. So that means that she has her spleen, her emotional solar plexus, her identity, her head, and her ajna all undefined. And that's a lot of openness, right? Where you're taking in other people's energy and amplifying it. So I love to hear you talking about really understanding and learning about setting boundaries for yourself, especially as you come into the new school year. Being able to do that for yourself, I think, is going to be super supportive for you in terms of maintaining your health and, your health, both mental well-being and physical well-being. And you also mentioned yoga and meditation. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about that and how that has supported you and deciding to become a yoga teacher. I'd love to hear about that a little bit more.
Yeah, so I, have practiced yoga off and on throughout my life in my 20s and 30s, and it had different meaning for me, struggling in your 20s just to figure things out. When my kids were little, it was like an escape for some me time. And being a middle school teacher, kind of just being able to do that. And then, during COVID, it was crazy. So getting out every day, like I had some really great soul sisters. We would contact each other, let's make sure we walk today. And we would kind of text one another while we were walking or doing yoga and that kind of stuff. And it always has helped me to be grounded. So after I left teaching, I knew that working with others and nourishing and helping them just to find their gifts still was something that lit me up. And I attended a yoga retreat with a friend of mine. at Kripalu up in the Berkshires, and came home from that weekend with kind of like a duh moment. Like, I could totally be doing this. Like, this would be perfect. It would still be teaching. It would be teaching and having people reconnect with themselves and ground themselves, and what a better world, right? So I came home, I did a bunch of research on where I could go and do this kind of learning. And I landed at Kripalu, right? So doing their YTT, their 200-hour yoga teacher certification. And that in itself was life-changing for me. It kind of helped me to understand. I found my tribe. It helped me to understand, that balance of me being on the go, 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 and wanting to check off every checkbox and get everything as perfect as I could, that I have to balance that other side of me. I have to ground and bring attention and self-care. I need to do that for me. In order to give, I have to have a full cup. So that really was so helpful for me. And since then, I've done some other work at Kripalu. I've taken other retreats. And I just completed in June the meditation module, which is moving towards my next 300. So that all those practices have really allowed me to land in a really good place. And it gave me some good practice this summer. I was blessed to have a lot of different travel plans this summer. And I said, let's, really try this on. So they kind of were close together. So a day or two in between each one. And I said, we really need to practice being present. I'm a list maker. I have lists to make. Like, it's bad, but it helps me to function. And I said, I have to be present on the trip and with the people that I'm with in the moment. I'm not going to worry about the next list. There's a day or 2 days when I get back that I'll be able to do it all. And it worked. It really did work. I had to keep reminding myself, nope, not now, put it away. It was great. August 1st came, and the biggest Sunday scary of the year for teachers. And I started to get a little itchy. And I said, okay, it's okay that I need lists to function. It's okay but when I'm present and I'm relaxing and I'm with people that I love and doing the things that I love, I can let the list go. So that's kind of how I start all of my yoga practices, is just to say, land on the mat and let the list go for an hour. You deserve this. You owe this to yourself, and it'll be there. It'll be there when you're done. So I've learned to take that practice for myself and really say, there are times when I need the list, and it's okay. It helps me to function my best, be my best self. And there's times when I just need to let it go so that I can really be fully present. I wish that I had a little bit of that more when my kids were younger, to be more present with them. I always say that children of teachers get the raw deal, because teachers come home completely exhausted and have very little patience and time and energy left for their own children. And thank goodness my children were just so lovely that they often brought the best out of me, even when I felt like I had nothing left to give. So, yeah. So that was a big learning thing for me. And the yoga has definitely helped. And I know that I will have to lean into that and rely on that to not slip back into that giving of 200% that teachers just do. I have to rely on that strength of my container and know that I have to do my meditation and my yoga on a regular basis so that I can have a full cup to give to the students and the colleagues that I work with that need me at my best.
Yeah, I think so many of us underestimate that. And especially sacral beings, generators and manifesting generators, tend to just put my head down and power through, right? And then you get burnt out, even with the sacral, you've got that battery. Yes, it's going to keep you going. However, we do have a burnout point. So it's really important to just stay focused on the fact that we need those self-care practices. So as a 6'3" profile, you've got a lot of different experimentation in your energy. And you've mentioned a couple of examples of lessons that you've learned. So as a 6'3", I'll just preface this by saying, as a 6'3", you lived the first part of your life, the first 30-ish years or so, really as a 3 line, heavy in the 3, heavy in the experimenting and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And then in the second part of life, the kind of middle third, you come in, you go up on the roof, it's called, and it's about integrating those lessons. And then in the last third of your life, you're called forward to kind of teach those. So I'm curious about looking back and kind of framing it that way. What sort of lessons do you think that you have learned through quote unquote mistakes?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that come to mind for me. Like I tend to get really excited about something new, like I understand the whole label of ADHD. Like that's right. That's me. I always felt like I was a poster child for that growing up, but it wasn't a thing when I was a kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was not a label that you gave. I was just a spaz. The teachers would always say, she's hyper, she's a spaz, that kind of thing. But I had a lot of energy. I've noticed as I've gotten older and with the help of human design that the way I would flit between new hobbies, like something would grab my attention, it would be super exciting. And I'd go out and buy all the stuff and I'd have all the good intentions of doing it. And I would do it for a while and then it would just fall away because frankly, something shinier came along and I hopped onto that. And then I always felt like, oh, I failed at that. Like this was just... So that whole thing about like being able to just let it go because it doesn't serve you anymore. So, really connecting with, well, do I have to finish it? Like books, I would read books and I'd be like, oh, this book is horrible, but I have to finish the book. And I had a colleague go, why? You don't have to finish it. If it's not entertaining to you, you're not enjoying it. And I was like, oh, I can do that. And they were like, you're 40 years old. Of course you can do that. And I was like, it didn't make sense to me that I could just let it go. So it's nice now to know that with the human design that I don't have to see it as something that's a failure.
Right.
It's just something that I decided that I no longer want to do. And then I think that the other piece would be I'm learning to decondition myself, and the time that I've had the past 2 years has made this a little bit easier. Of how I grew up and the expectations of being the good girl and just do as you're told and you will have success and all that kind of stuff, which has turned out to be not true in any way. And the goal of trying to be a better parent. I wish I had human design in my life so I could understand my family, which interestingly enough, my husband and I have two sons. One of my sons, all three of us are man gens, and then the other son is a gen.
Oh.
So it's a house full of efficiency. However, we all don't see things the most efficient in the same way. So there's that struggle of, well, it's right to me. Don't tell me my way's wrong because it works for like so. But having known that when they were little would have been super helpful. Mm-hmm. But now I'm freeing myself of things I can't fix in the past and saying I can work really hard to parent them as adults and to not try to fix everything and make everything perfect, but to, when they're having struggle, to sit with them in the struggle and know that they know that I love them and that what they're going through and feeling isn't wrong. It's part of the human experience, and to let them feel all their big feelings. So, yeah. So I've had lots of Brene Brown. Lots of Brene has been super helpful in learning and navigating all of that, and to not feel badly about myself because I can't fix anything in the past, but I can deal with what is here and now. And I'm learning a lot. The generation of my children is really good at learning how to communicate well. And I'm really happy for that. And I'm on board knowing that sometimes the conversations I have with them are going to be a little hurtful. But it's okay because it will move us forward to having a better relationship as adults. And I'm all for that.
Oh, you see what I mean? Such a beautiful human. Oh, just so good.
You're so sweet.
So good. So I'm glad you brought up parenting because I'm curious. One of the things I'm aiming to do with this podcast is support women who are in the transition times of their lives, in terms of parenting, and how some of us right now are facing sending a child off to college or, sending your last child off to college, whatever. So I'm curious if you have advice for moms who are about to do that, and or Yeah, I'd love to hear kind of your experience with empty nest and maybe how it's allowed you to discover new parts of yourself.
Well, I do. And I think I shared this with you because no one had shared this with me. But when my oldest went off to college, no one told me that I was going to feel physical pain,
Mm.
physical pain. And I share that with everyone if they're ready. Like I kind of test the waters to see how tender they are, because if they're really in the head in the sand, don't want to remember that they're actually leaving, then I don't. But if it's far enough removed or just after to kind of say, you need to know that it can, not that everyone will, but that it can feel physical. I literally felt like my uterus was being ripped out of my body. My heart was, as we were driving away. I knew he was going to be good, and it was a great school that he was going to, but we were leaving and we come to a red light, and I said to my husband, you have to go through the light. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you have to go through the light. Just go through the light. He's like, I can't. It's a red light. And I'm like, if you stop, I'm getting out and running back. Like, you have to go. He's like, you are insane right now. I'm like, it hurts. Like, you have to just keep going. And then, the further we got away, then I was fine. And I cried, of course, sad about the things that had evolved. But like, as parents, we got them to this place that we've wanted them to have and move forward. And they're going to be great. They're going to fly. It's time to fly, but it's so raw. And I was not prepared for that at all. So I like to share that because it may be someone's experience, and I just don't want them to feel that there's something wrong with them for feeling that physical pain. And the empty nest piece it was a little rough because it happened at the same time that I resigned and was going through this, who am I now? It all coincided, and my physical health it was like they say going through the fires of hell. Like, you have to, and granted, I live in a beautiful home. I have a very supportive husband. I have lots of loving friends of him, not in the middle of a war-torn country. I get all of that. However, for me, it was a real struggle of self-discovery, and it happened all at the same time. So it was a bit of a challenge to land, but I know that I even knew at the time that I had to go through it in order to end up on the other side as a better person. Otherwise, I was just going to spin in the same spot forever. And I knew that I didn't want that either. So I really had to push myself forward, and I had lovely, lovely support of friends and family and church family and communities online like yourself. And I had that planner, your lovely planner, was so helpful for me to constantly reflect and set goals for myself. And even if they were small little goals, to kind of get through it and to not sit in that I'm not a mom anymore, because I'm always a mom, right? But just to say, what is my next journey? What is my next giving of myself and my heart in a way that serves the better good? It was super helpful, the human design piece. And I really dove into it, and then would take a step back, and because I could see myself going completely into the rabbit hole and not being able to really digest the little nuggets as they came along. So, and I love all of like the little mini courses that you've given and others online too, to just really help have a better understanding of all of it. So it's been a journey. It's not an easy thing. Empty nesting is not an easy thing. And with my husband being a man gen too, we can be patient and function on our own. Like, we can just bang out work and bang out the day and all that kind of stuff. And I've definitely come to the realization of, hey, babe, we have to make time to connect, because we can be so effective at going through the day and, just plop on the couch for TV and then go to bed and start over. I don't want that. Do you want that? He's like, not really. So I'm like, okay, let's keep the communication up and find new ways of enjoying one another and enjoying our free time. So that's kind of where we're at right now with all of that.
It's like exploring with that. Do you know, is he an emotional manifesting generator or sacral? Not sure.
I'm not sure, but I have his little thing on my phone here, so I can tell you in a second. So how would I know?
Yeah. So if his emotional solar plexus is defined,
it says emotional solar plexus.
Okay. So then there's a difference between the two of you in how you're making decisions. You'll know in the moment he will need time. He's going to need like time to digest, time to.
Oh, yes. Wait to respond. It says right here, wait to respond.
Well, wait to respond would be your strategy for both of you. But what does it say for his
Okay.
authority? Authority
Inner
says,
authority, decision making, emotional solar plexus.
yeah. So
He's
651. Yeah. So he's going to need just more time to digest and kind of let things land and, percolate for a little bit before he makes a decision, versus you are going to know right in the moment. And you'll both really benefit from giving each other choices, like this or that, right? Choices or yes or no questions. Those are really helpful ways to communicate as generator types, because you can listen to your sacral. You listen, you kind of feel into that. Am I getting a yes? Am I getting that lit up feeling? And if not, then it's a no. So using those tips to help you build your communication styles. And I want to go back to your reflection about running the red light. Actually, I told this story when I was recording another pod and we were talking about transitioning, leaving your kid off. And I was like, this story is crazy. It's so fun. I have to share it. So I'm so glad that you shared it. I can see how you would feel that way, partly because you have so much openness in your chart and your emotional solar plexus is undefined. So you are taking in and amplifying everybody's feelings. And right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
So maybe your hubby was also feeling it, but he might be feeling it at a 5 and you're next to him at a 10, because it's intense. It's really, really intense. And the open or undefined emotional solar plexus can just take it up a notch because you're, again, amplifying. So I love that story and how that actually plays out. And then there's just so much in the way that you communicate and talk about the things that you love that shares that 6-line energy. It's for me hard to put it into words because it feels so otherworldly, almost like really connected to a different understanding of the world. And that comes through when you're communicating. And you talk so much about teaching, which is, I think, a lovely thing for 6 lines to do because there is so much wisdom built up over the lifetime. And so I think it's just wonderful that you're making your way back to the classroom and that you're teaching yoga now as well. Those are just really great ways for you to honor your design. And with the empty nest component and needing to redefine your relationship is, we aren't the same people, right, that we were when we became parents. And we've had this journey together as parents for the last 18 plus years. And who are we now coming out the other end? And I think it's great that you're having those conversations at home about, let's not just be on autopilot if we really want this to, if we want to have a thriving relationship, like let's kind of get to know each other again. And knowing now, like you said, you didn't know your children's human design earlier. And this is an opportunity now that you know your design and your husband's design to be able to utilize that a little bit as you get to know each other again in these new roles, like you're parenting adults, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think listening to that sacral in the past when I'm busy with work and busy being a parent and, there's some discussion between my husband and I, and it doesn't feel right and it's a no, but just saying, I'm just going to carry this for now because I don't want to have that discussion. I'm just going to suck it up because I have so much other stuff to do. And now when that's coming up, I'm like, all right, this needs to have a conversation. Is now the right time or is it not? Let's come back to this later when we're both kind of in a good place, and have the discussion. Whereas in the past, I would just stuff it down. So it's good in that sense now that we have the time to be able to explore that together. I think sometimes he kind of looks at me like, oh, okay. All right, we're going to talk about this. All right. And he's definitely on board. So it's all good. It's just, those were my decisions in the past to kind of just avoid it or take it on myself. But yeah, now it's kind of a sweet time. It really is a sweet time to rediscover what brought us together in the first place and what decisions we've made individually and as a couple and as parents, the experiences that we've had. And now we're on this other side, and what beauty lies ahead for us is kind of exciting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's such a great way to describe this time of life. I think a lot of times women coming into this time of life kind of come, like feeling tight and resisting it. And I don't want to get older. We're wired to not really like change, even though it is the only constant in life. And so how can we instead redefine this period as literally a time for reinventing ourselves and discovering?
It's a major pivot. Right. So, it's a major pivot for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, for this conversation. It has been so lovely reconnecting with you. It's always great to be in your energy, and you have shared just such wisdom today. So I know it will help so many of our listeners.
You. I hope so.
So
it's great to be with you as always, Larry. I learn so much every time that we connect, and I appreciate you very much.
Oh, thank you. And tell us where, if people want to reach out and connect with you, tell us where we can do that, how we can take classes with you if we're in the area, all those fun things.
My website is Everyday Om. And my email is oneomeveryday@gmail.com.
Okay, great. So I'll drop those in the show notes as well. And thank you again for your time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Midlife by Design. Melissa mentioned so many instances when knowing her HD really helped to support her. If you want to learn your human design, book a session with me. The beauty of a session is that you get my intuitive takes on how all the elements in your